going on, guys? I'm gonna give you guys a chance to come into the conversation. I really want you guys to hear this discussion. You guys know, you guys know that there's a serious concern right now with kind of what the Me Too movement is sort of doing to due process, it's doing to justice, what it's doing to Black men, kind of putting Black men under a scary microscope. And there are specific cases. These are real human beings that are being affected by this, and which is why it's very important for us to know about these cases. And so there was a case that was actually brought to my attention by a brother named Bishop Tavis Grant, who's actually here today. And the case involves Quintez Cephus. Quintez is an outstanding athlete, superstar wide receiver at the University of Wisconsin, who is in the middle of a situation that just boggles the mind in terms of what's going on here. And so in order to kind of dig into this, Bishop Grant has granted us his time to come in here and tell us about it. So first I want to ask my brother, Bishop Grant, how you doing today, man?
Man, that's awesome. It's so great to be connected with you and your platform. I am a fan and a follower. Admire and respect all that you do. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. You know, I've seen, you do great work throughout the years. And I know that you're not a newcomer to this game. There's a lot of newbies to the whole being Black thing, who become internet revolutionaries in the last 6 months. But you've been in this game for many, many years, decades. And so in the latest chapter of your battle against racial tyranny, for lack of a better phrase, you have taken on this case of Quintez Cephus at the University of Wisconsin. For those who are not familiar with Quintez and what's going on with him, can you kind of give some background on the situation?
Well, it's an incredible case. I think it is a national template for the impact of sexual assault on African American men, in particular, student athletes as a whole. Quintez is an incredible athlete. Student. Right? He's academically, he's in the top 5% of all Big Ten student athletes across the country. He's a star wide receiver for the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And just like all of us, got caught up in a seemingly innocent situation that absolutely turned into a criminal case. And for all practical purposes, Quintez is innocent. He's pleaded guilty, and he's fighting for his freedom and for his name and for his earning potential. Across the country, there is this wave of illegitimate, illegal, unethical behavior where people are using the Me Too movement in some respects to target young Black athletes like Quintez, go after them in their professional to get paid in many instances, to get a undisclosed settlement in other ways, to be punitive. Just here in the States a couple of days ago, a white woman held an African American man up from entering his own building. And so this shadow of suspicion, this scourge of premeditated guilt in a democracy where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, African American males are under the cloak of being guilty until proven innocent.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you told me about the case of Quintez Cephus at University of Wisconsin, for those of you who are just coming in, that's what we're talking about. And I encourage everybody to look this up and share this with other people. Don't just watch, don't just agree, like go share this, make sure people know about this. When you brought me this case, I couldn't believe it. I do something that I think a lot of the hardcore supporters of Me Too don't do, which is I do look at the evidence. You bring me something that involves another brother. I mean, look, I want to make sure that that truth and justice are served. but truth and justice must come before favoritism or preconceived bias. You know, I'm not going to
political correctness.
There you go. Exactly. And, you know, so I'm not going to believe that you're innocent just because you're a brother. So I, you know, talked to you about it. You broke it down. I asked some questions and I did some research on it, and I couldn't believe it. You know, and so how did this happen? First of all, can you tell that story in terms of how these?
I mean, it was a social hookup, and you know, these girls basically went after him on an evening in April. Text messages back and forth. They meet up at a social gathering, and they end up having sex. They end up having a threesome. And one may, you know, believe that's immoral, unethical, or inappropriate, but the boundaries and margins of sex today are all over the place. And after the encounter, there were two other people in the apartment that were there. There were no calls of rape. There were no marks. There was no physicality of that at all. And several hours later, these girls claim after consensual sex that they were too intoxicated to consent to the sex. Now, I don't know how you work that, you know, with not having a toxicology kit on hand and all of that. But certainly when you level such charges like that have such life altering impact, you ought to have the threshold of proof and evidence, and there's overwhelming proof, substantial proof that sustains and supports Quintez's innocence. And there are any number of witnesses that corroborate his innocence. And when there is a racial bias, because there is, with all data that's available as of now, there is a disparity. There's a disparity almost 30, maybe 40 to 1, white athletes versus African American athletes on teams and on college campuses who are athletes. But the numbers are skewed in an incredible way, scientifically and any other way, where African American male students are 4 times more likely to be accused of sexual assault, almost 7 times more likely to be under a false allegation. But that doesn't stop, for example, what we're fighting with Quintez right now. The University of Wisconsin is now trying to take his scholarship. And I mentioned to you, he is in the top 5% of academic athletes across the country, trying to take his scholarship while he is in the midst of a criminal case. And in most instances, a civil proceeding comes after the criminal case. When President Trump came in, he appointed Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos did away with all of the time requirements that existed in the Obama administration. And so there is no time restraint on the university to complete its investigation. By the way, if you participate in their investigation, you have to waive your Miranda rights, which are constitutional. You're not able to use the same criminal threshold in Title IX proceedings. The threshold is lower than civil proceedings. And so in essence, here's the formula. If one on the committee believes that you are 50%, a likelihood of 50% guilty of something, they can therefore move to expel you from the college, and you therefore lose your eligibility, you lose your scholarship, where in the criminal proceeding, it's beyond the shadow of a doubt. And so it's almost as if Title IX gives universities a third wheel, a third rail of criminal justice that is not just, because you're not able to use the same threshold. And in many instances, these universities turn their findings over to law enforcement, over to prosecutors, particularly where there's a criminal matter. And so in essence, the prosecutor has your playbook. because you're using the same evidence. You don't get to use hearsay. You don't get to use. You have to use. You get to use the same evidence you would use in your criminal proceeding, but it is not given the same degree of requirement in terms of legitimacy, cross-examination, the forensic aspect of it. It is a very egregious and gratuitous process, and in most instances, African American athletes either take a plea or they just walk out in the shadows of night, having lost everything. And this case, I believe, is a national case in terms of its impact on the common African American male student.
Everybody who just tuned in, I'm speaking with Bishop Tavis Grant, and he's one of the people, one of the advocates, the strongest advocate that I know of, fighting on the case of Quintez Cephus. Quintez is a star wide receiver at the University of Wisconsin, who is now facing what appear to be unproven allegations that he allegedly sexually assaulted two women that apparently agreed to have a threesome with him. Their claim, to brief everybody on it, is that they were too intoxicated to have consented. There's no proof that they were too intoxicated. In fact,
the evidence. I mean, they were trying to be intoxicated. I mean, here's it's not as if he's not a drinker. Okay, he's not a drinker. He's not the party type. He's a bookworm at best with an amazing athleticism. Okay, but the way some have tried to spin this as if he was giving them the alcohol or he was giving them the alcoholic beverages. That was all on their own. And, in this turn up culture, in this we lit all day culture, if the objective is to be intoxicated. So how does one engage in consensual sex and engage in drinking? I mean, we just had a Supreme Court nominee who's now on the court say, "I like beer. I like drinking." All right, that's what he said. And the industry says, "Thank you very much, Judge Kavanaugh. We like people who like to drink beer and love to drink it, drive ourselves up, if you will." The question is not so much as whether we believe the ethical or the moral aspect of it, but the fact that they agreed to consensual sex and they admit that they were drinking, and they also admit that they drank to intoxication, to a level where they, if that is their claim in essence is flawed on its face in terms of trying to substantiate someone raping you. All right. And all that Quintez wants is, all his family wants and his supporters want, is allow all of this evidence to come out in a courtroom where it's supposed to come out. Let objective minds see the evidence rather than subvert his case and taint and poison the well so that he is not under the presumption of guilt. If the University of Wisconsin pulls his scholarship, he will be under the presumption of guilt. How do you select a jury from that community when the university has painted, to some extent, a line of guilt around you by them expelling you that is based upon an investigation that you weren't able to participate in? There is no reasonable legal advocate, litigator, or lawyer that would ask someone facing these kind of charges to participate in any investigation where your Miranda rights are not guarded, where the threshold of evidence is lower, and you expose yourself to self-incrimination. And so he had no choice but to follow legal advice, and that's the reason why he filed a lawsuit against the university, because it's very egregious and very gratuitous. His likeness, for example, is all over the training facility. You ought to see the response he gets from players, from coaches, from students on the campus, because he's been a great citizen on the campus and in the city of Madison, Wisconsin. He's not a distraction. He's not fought to pull other team members off the field. His conduct on and off the field has been exemplary, and he's entitled to his day in court.
Well, let me say this, and everybody who's watching, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button, the share button, like button, subscribe button, all those things, so other people can hear about this case of Quintez Cephus. So Bishop Grant, I have people that I'm looking at the comments, and most people understand where you're coming from. Most people know what it's like to be Black. They know about the history of this country, but then you got some people who are saying, well, you can't just pull out the whole, he's a Black man and Black men have been falsely accused in the past, so that means that he's falsely accused. For those people, can you give some specifics on this case that exonerate, they exonerate Cephus, in this situation? Like, what are some specifics in terms of maybe things that happened after the fact that you think add merit to the idea that he's a victim of a false allegation?
Well, I can speak to what has been made public. For example, what has been made public is that after the alleged incident, they got together and had snacks and what have you. That one of the accusers took an Uber. Now, I don't know how somebody intoxicated beyond consent can have the wherewithal to order an Uber. You got to put an address in. You got to click the tab to confirm it. You got a pen. You put the pen where you want to be picked up. There's some motor skills required in ordering an Uber. Most specifically, is that there are two people in the apartment. There are two non-drinking, non-intoxicated individuals in the apartment who knew nothing about a rape until the next day when it was in the news, when it was announced. I mean, they were just as much in shock that this person went to say that there was a rape. And so I think that what has been publicized and what will be revealed in the criminal proceedings will be alarming, that this case even got this far. And here's the reality. It's very apparent that you and I are African American men. There's nothing to prove about that. That's not an assumption. That's a fact. The fact that the accusers are white and the fact that Quintez is Black is at best a description of the participants. But the overwhelming influence of a racial bias, where you have in the criminal justice system over and over and over again. This town, for example, just hired a former police chief that went on YouTube and made a full-length video, racist video, using racist language, offensive language against African Americans. Madison, Wisconsin Police Department, after he was fired from another police department, they hired him to work on that police department. There's no African American that would ever experience that if it weren't for the weight of racial bias. And the racial bias speaks for itself. So the reason why people ask the question about him being a Black man and these being white accusers is because there is a pattern where there is this presumption of guilt, where there is an African American defendant, where there is someone who is accused an African American, particularly African American male. There is that presumption of guilt. We're not building the case on that. We're building the case on the evidence. And that's the reason why the university ought not be participating in Title IX, to prove that they get it, that they understand. It is the reason why Title IX was given additional strength, because the Obama administration said, we want to take accusers seriously. Well, it's one thing to believe whatever you want to believe, but facts are facts. You can believe in the tooth fairy, you can believe in ghosts, you can believe in goblins, you can believe in all of that, but the fact of the matter is, a fact is a fact. We want Quintez Cephus to be tried on the facts void of any preference or any prejudice that would enter this situation.
Everybody who's watching, I'm speaking with Bishop Tavis Grant. We're talking about the case of Quintez Cephus at the University of Wisconsin. I'll tell you what really gets me, about this case is the amount of energy and effort, unnecessary energy and effort, that has to be put into proving that Quintez is a good guy, that Quintez is a good student, that Quintez is not a troublemaker, that Quintez would never do this, that Quintez has all this evidence supporting him, that Quintez, that there's nothing showing that he appeared to have done any of this. I think that's what bothers me a lot, is that it almost reminds me of the Trayvon Martin case, where when you are a black male who's been accused, you have to almost damn near prove that you're perfect in order to even get a chance to have the same justice everybody else gets.
Dr. Boyce, you're hitting the nail on the head. In trying to adjudicate this, whether it's Tamir Rice, whether it's Trayvon Martin, whether it is Laquan McDonald. We had to fight for the video to be what many people don't know. Those of us who boycotted the King Breakfast a year ago, we took on great criticism from our own African American leadership here in Chicago. Why would you do that? Dr. King wouldn't do anything like that, so on and so forth. Had it not been for the release of the video, the jury would have never convicted Van Dyke for what happened, which was murder. But there was this demonization. Somebody just needs to put it on the calendar. When will African Americans just be treated as human beings like everyone else, and void of bias and void of political correctness? Because whenever racial bias enters the equation, all of the dynamics are affected like a cancer in your body. And you're hitting the nail on the head when you reference someone like Trayvon Martin, because again, whether you are the accused or you are the victim, you end up being exposed to being demonized for either being the accused or being the victim, when you can't help but be the color that you are, and you can't help to be the race that you are. And the preference and prejudice that's associated with that, it egregiously affects individuals' ability to go into the criminal justice system and get a fair trial, get a fair deal the way the system is supposed to work.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I think that the thing about this case is that it affects all of us. All of us, either if you're not a black man, you have a black man you care about in your life. You have a son, you have a brother, you have a husband, and I think that the idea that an allegation, can destroy a person. First of all, it definitely has to keep black people on high alert. You got to be cautious and careful. You are the victims of predatory terrorism. Those are the best words that come to mind, because, in many cases, we assume that the person who's being accused is the predator. But in a lot of situations, it's the opposite, right? The predator is actually the accuser. But because they don't take that time to investigate this, and because everybody's favorite black president, was supporting these initiatives that allowed the removal of due process, the removal of adequate investigation, it saddens me. It just makes me so sad that black people have to work this hard just to get basic fairness. I think
the evidence in many instances is fraudulent. It is suspect. It doesn't meet the threshold of the preponderance of evidence. And again, the racial bias. I would venture to say, if Quintez Cephus was a white athlete, if he was a Baker Mayfield type, he would not be facing what he's facing, because racial bias does play a significant role. And if individuals did not want that to be the perception, they would take every step necessary to ensure that they would preserve constitutionality, that they would preserve one's right to a fair trial, that they would make sure that they would in no way obfuscate or have any provide any irritant or any infraction that would make one's defense defective. And this happens over and over again where evidence is suppressed. In the Laquan McDonald case, which is now the second phase of it, is going after the officers who submitted false police reports. In Quintez's case, there is the campus police report, then there is the Madison Police Department police report. They're two separate reports. And interestingly enough, they tell two separate stories. You're not always able to do that if you're sitting in a room and people are saying, tell us what we want to hear or else. And in many instances, one of the things I hope you would do is this runaway behavior with prosecutors offering plea deals, where kids are ill-advised, they're poorly represented, their parents are in fear, and they sit them in a room and they say, listen, take the deal or else. And in many of these cases where there's exoneration, where they go to the Supreme Court and they get their cases cleared. I sat with a young man yesterday, Dr. Boyce, who spent 21 years in prison in the state of Wisconsin, only to find out that the clerk of the county of La Crosse County, the clerk subverted and suppressed evidence that never made it to his lawyer in discovery. He spent 21 years in prison on a sexual assault case. Listen to this. And they've offered him $15,000 as punitive damages for 21 years. Now, I don't know what the right amount of money is, but I know, hell, you got to offer him more than $15,000. But again, here's somebody who was poorly represented. Racial bias played a role, but then there was the subversive, corrupt behavior of persons in the process, suppressing evidence. I mean, when you suppress evidence and you subvert it at the same time, you adversely affect someone's ability to stand in court and prove their innocence. And here he is, innocent, got his PhD, did some things as best as he could, but he still has this cloud hanging over him as having given away having taken from him rather 21 years of his life. We dare not let this same thing happen to Quintez or any other young, promising or potentially promising young African-American male. And there's no better time for us to stand up and fight than now.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bishop Grant, I had a debate, online. People know how I feel about what the MeToo movement has become. I feel like it's become kind of just a scary thing when the integrity of the movement, which I believed in it, for a very long time, but the integrity of the movement was dissolved by the politics behind it. The politics is what led to the temptation to water it down by believing any, liar or con artist or whomever came forward with an allegation. When you're doing that, you're bolstering your numbers, yes, but the problem is that you are going to get some bad apples in there. Even in the case of Bill Cosby, you had some people in there making accusations that had no proof at all. Right. Well, actually, I don't think any of them were ever proven, but some of the women, I mean, you look at their past and it's like, if you just took 2 seconds to just look at the fact this person lies all the time, she's been on drugs for 20 years, it just hurts the credibility. One of
the things that's so amazing about Quintez is knowing his mother and him and his brother and his sister. His father was killed a year ago, April. My wife and I, we had one of the most overwhelming moments in sharing with them the number of victims in their family who have been affected by sexual abuse and sexual assault. And to see this young man, just it was overwhelming for him to say, you know, to see my loved ones and my family members go through this. One woman in their family never got her mother's words was she never got herself back. She was so messed up, and she died at an early age. But you know, he loves his mother. He has a great respect for people. But his point was, how could I? Why would I? You know, why would I do to somebody what has been done to my family members? I mean, it was like, you know, it was compelling. I mean, it grabbed us in our hearts to see this young man appreciate the fact that I've seen this up close and personal. And we're talking about not being able to benefit from the Me Too movement, by the way. Nobody marched for their family and advocated for their family. And there are a lot of people who are living with this pain every day that didn't have a Me Too movement. But the rawness of it, saying, you know, I mean, this is the reason why he's avoided trying to publicly blast these women and go at their name and their reputation and all that kind of stuff. He simply wants to move on and clear his name. I mean, I'm just not, you know, he certainly is not out like Justice Kavanaugh, and he had the right to do it. And you and I would probably do the same thing. We sit in front of anybody and go to 10 shouting for our innocence. But this young man is mingled with a certain degree of integrity in terms of saying, I have seen what sexual assault and sexual abuse has done to women in my family, and I don't want to participate in demonizing and of such on one end of the scale. On the other end, I wouldn't participate. And any number of women have come forward to validate and substantiate and support him and speak up for him, and say, you know, I respect him. I appreciate him. He's a great student. He's a great athlete, a great friend. This is not in his background. This is not known of him by anybody. This kid's from Macon, Georgia. He's from what you and I call the country, and he's living in Madison, Wisconsin. Clean cut, straightforward, no chaser, and we got into a situation that young people get into. You and I were young once. Young people get into, and one grades the circumstance on whatever level, morally or otherwise. He's not a rapist. He's not
right. You know, and let me jump in and just say that, you know, I agree with you, and I think that honestly, I'm tired of us as Black people always having to play defense. You know, I believe you, Bishop Grant. I believe you that he's a good kid. I believe you, you know, that he's a good student. I believe you that he's had these experiences, but I don't want to play defense no more. I want to play offense. I want to go and find out who are these young ladies and what is their motivation? How do we sue them after this is over with? You know, I want to find out, how do we make sure they go to prison for the same amount of time that he would have went to prison had he been convicted? I don't want, you know, I'm tired of us having to just literally be choir boys in order to prove that we didn't rape somebody. No. Yeah. If you accuse a man, anybody, of sexual assault, the burden of proof is on you. It is not on him to prove that he's not a rapist. And here's the other thing too. I don't even like getting too caught up in the politics of it all. Even in Kavanaugh's case, I'm not a fan of Kavanaugh as a judge, but I was like, okay, if the man's a rapist and y'all want to bring that in to invalidate his Supreme Court nomination, show some proof. If you can't show some proof, then debate him on the issues. Say, look, you're a conservative. We don't like what you believe about Roe versus Wade or about affirmative action. That's all fair game. But when you start getting dirty like that, where you start falsely accusing people of stuff or accusing people of stuff with no evidence, I think everybody who is in remotely fair-minded should be outraged. I also think these Black lawyers out here who are watching, any Black lawyer watching, You need to get out here and help fight this issue. I had a debate with a black lawyer today, a black woman. I think she might be a feminist. I don't know. And she was defending the Me Too movement and saying, well, these false allegations are not a big deal. They don't happen that often. And I said, who the hell are you as a black woman to tell me that my life as a black man does not matter? You can't say that to me. You can't tell me that these men's lives don't matter the same way Becky's life matters, or, you know, or whomever, some white female's life matters. One white woman gets,
for example, in Bridgeport, Connecticut,
I'm angry about it, bro. I can't.
Well, the anger is noted and should be as such. There's a case in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where two African American athletes were accused. They found out the woman had falsely accused them. But here's the kicker: they were expelled from college due to Title IX. The universities have yet to reinstate them and give them their eligibility back. I mean, these are you know, as strong as we are on supporting victims of sexual abuse, we ought to be equally strong against those who abuse the system. Because what we're saying is, if you make the accusation, we're going to give you a blanket license of truth. We're going to say, if you said it happened, it happened. Okay. If we're going to do that, the threshold ought to be of such that because of the impact. I had a guy, he's playing ball in overseas now, Darrell Williams. He was proven guilty, a registered sex offender from Oklahoma to the state of Illinois. It took the Oklahoma Supreme Court to overturn his case. He's exonerated today. T. Boone Pickens put the money up, the oil tycoon put the money up for his appeal, $250,000 for his appeal. His mother's a CTA bus driver in the city of Chicago. He could not recoup the season he lost where he could have been playing basketball. He was a part of Derrick Rose's basketball program, and the potential scouts that he lost. I mean, guy has a phenomenal, doing well overseas playing ball, but you don't get any of that back. And this is where I think people who are strong advocates and feminists and so on and so forth and want to believe in women and give them and all. Okay, what about those who are using this not for the purpose of getting justice, but for the purpose of getting paid, for the purpose of targeting and damaging and destroying people, all right, to save their own name or their own station in life? There is not that equality there. And those of us who are adversely affected by this, in particular African Americans, have to raise a brow to it in terms of, and anger, in terms of people realizing what we have gone through historically due to false allegations. What Emmett Till, what we have gone through by stop and frisk, what we have gone through by shoot first and ask questions later. I mean, racial profiling, redlining by insurance companies, by banks, by people who lost their homes during the bubble. I mean, we can go down the line of the adverse impact of what was meant to be good, but ended up being evil as it relates to its application to African Americans.
I'll tell you, man, I think this case is it's very troublesome. It's an abomination. And I want to say thank you, for the fact that you're fighting on his brother's behalf, because nobody's fighting for the black man. Ain't nobody out here really, they think that we don't have feelings. They think that we don't have a future that we're trying to protect. They don't think that we have a right to have justice. Even a lot of black people have fallen into that mindset. And I think it's very unfortunate. You just got to be right. You got to be fair. And again, if there was evidence showing that this brother had done this terrible crime, then I wouldn't even want to talk about it. But the fact is that that there is no evidence, and there is a criminal involved in this. There are two criminals involved in this case, but it's not him. And so I want to say thank you Bishop Grant.
Well, I want to thank you. And those that are following you, they can go to www.qt87believer, www.qt87believer.com. There is a website that's dedicated to updating his supporters, giving real-time information on what he is doing. He has a phenomenal youth tour. I'll tell you this right quick. That's going to hit Atlanta. It's going to hit parts of the South. We're going to bring him to Chicago, called Unstoppable. The kid wants, I mean, he has a genuine charisma in terms of saying, hey, I can't. His father was a leader did time in prison. All right. He came up from one of the roughest communities in the South and took all the right turns to get to where he is right now. And he said, Bishop, I want to tell my story. And what I've said to him, innocent people don't have to hide. It's the guilty people hiding. You see somebody going to court and they got a coat over their head, an umbrella, they're guilty. Innocent people don't have to hide. And so go to that website, hashtag QT Believer on Twitter, QT Believer. I'm a believer. Dr. Boyce is a believer. And I pray that you would be a believer. This is the kind of case that will make a difference for young Black boys and girls across this country, that we raise a standard and say, when they are right, they should be treated right. And Mama put it right, Dr. Boyce. Right is always right.
There you go. And they never left. Well, thank you very much, Bishop. I appreciate you bringing this.
Enjoy China.
Thank you. I will.
Enjoy China. Enjoy your international travels. We're praying for you, and keep on doing the good work, Dr. Boyce Watkins.
All right. Thank you very much, my brother. Everybody, this is Bishop Cephus Grant. And please make sure you go check out the case and find out what's going on. And because this is really important for our community to know about. And thank you very much, Bishop Grant.
All right. Have a great one.
You too, brother. You too. All right. So you guys, I want to kind of, I'm gonna hang out here for a second and just kind of talk through, some thoughts here. I wanted Bishop Grant to make sure that I wanted to make sure he got a chance to really tell you his perspective in terms of what's going on. And y'all heard a little bit of what I'm thinking on this. And I'm just going to kind of elaborate. First of all, make sure you take a second real quick. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button or the share button or the subscribe button on the channel, please do that. This is drboycetv.com. At drboycetv.com, this is where I go live. Make sure you subscribe there. Also, if you want to join our League of Intelligent Black People, which consists of those who don't just support the channel, but also get special benefits like invitations to private meetings, free classes, things like that. You can go to intelligentblackpeople.com. Somebody please type that in so others will see it. That's intelligentblackpeople.com. But anyway, let me just kind of give you a quick thought on this. Here's the thing about this case that bothers me the most. What bothers me is that, I really hate the fact that we as Black men always have to be on the defensive. I'm gonna tell you what, like this. Look, I play sports, and I learned in sports that when you're always playing defense, the best thing that you can do is minimize the number of points that the other team scores on you, typically, right? When you're always playing defense, the best you can hope for is that you won't lose by that much. You can't win a Super Bowl with only defense. You need offense. Offense is how you score points. So I personally think in this particular situation, we must think about sports in the sense that, you play offense when you know that you don't have to play defense. Sometimes you got to play defense, right? But then sometimes you realize, wait a minute, they shouldn't even be moving the ball on us because everything is on our side right now. Because we have the possession of the ball. So in the Quintez Cephus case, I don't want to play defense on this young man in his background. I don't want to have to sit around all day and talk about the fact that he's a choir boy and he makes straight A's and he walked an old lady across the street and he's one of the sweetest human beings that I've ever met. And I don't want to do all of that. He ain't got to prove none of that. As far as I'm concerned, Quintez could be an asshole if that's what he chose to be. But even if he were an asshole, which he's not, he's a good guy. He seems to be anyway, based on what I've seen and read and heard and talked to people about stuff like that. Nobody deserves to be falsely accused. Right now, Quintez is a victim of one of the greatest predators in the United States. We talk consistently about terrorism, right? The Democrats have and all these liberals and everything, they've kind of agreed with you, some of them, the smart ones anyway, have agreed with you that the white male is the greatest terrorist in America, right? We know this, right? Most terrorist incidents are committed by white males. They're not committed by Muslims or black people, anything like that, right? These shootings and all that, we know who's doing these shootings, right? Well, I would argue that the greatest predator in America is Becky gone bad. Not every Becky out here, and I'm not talking about all of them. I got friends that, of all ethnic backgrounds, and I'm not talking, if you are not a person who would ever falsely accuse somebody, then I'm not talking about you. But y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know y'all got some liars out here. You've got some vindictive people out here. You've got some people out here that will destroy their enemies no matter what it takes. You've got people who can't handle a broken heart and who will feel that you deserve whatever happens to you because you made them sad. Now, I'm going to tell you like this. Look, I have in my life as a man, I have had numerous relationship disappointments at the hands of women. I've been cheated on. I've been mistreated. I've been left in the dust for another man. I've gone through all of that. But never once did I ever think that I should have the right to falsely accuse that woman of a horrible crime that would get her sent to prison for the next 20 years. Never once have I even known that kind of power in this country. As a black man, I don't have that kind of power. If I go make an accusation against an ex-girlfriend and say she raped me, she stole my money, she did whatever, they're going to investigate, number one. And if I can't prove it, I'm going to get prosecuted for filing a false accusation against another person. So what I'm trying to say to you is that we as a community have to make sure that it's abundantly clear to anybody who doesn't understand or disagrees that you can't live in a country where you give any group of people enough power to condemn another group of people to go to prison for life for something where there is no evidence. And let's be clear, going to prison is a life sentence. I don't care if you're there for 5 years, 1 year. For a lot of people, it's a life sentence. If you go to prison as a man and you get raped 100 times, and somebody gives you AIDS, and then you go through the rest of your life stigmatized as a convict, that's a life sentence. You're paying for the rest of your life. You're losing years of your life that you can never get back. So prison is a life sentence for the most part, the way we've designed this system. So the idea that we have people in this society that can condemn others to a life sentence in prison for something where there is no proof should be appalling to anybody who believes in justice or who believes in fairness. And if you don't agree with me, then I feel sorry for you because you're either an unethical person or you have no education. You're supposed to be innocent till proven guilty. I don't care what bad people have done to you in your life. I've had bad people do things to me too. But one thing I learned a long time ago is how to sort out the good people from the bad people. Even when I talk about Becky, I ain't talking about all white women as bad people or all black or all white men are bad people. I'm talking about the bad white women and the bad white men who take advantage of white privilege and use that to exterminate black people. What they're doing to black men in this country right now is no different from what they did to the Jews in 1942. The only difference between what they're doing to black people now and what they did to the Jews back in the World War II is that our Holocaust has lasted for hundreds of years. They had a bad 6 years where they lost about 6 million people, and it was wrong. It was terrible for somebody to do that to another person. But they've been doing this to us for 400 years. So I know I'm speaking on deaf ears for a lot of people. I know a lot of people ain't going to get it. And the reason they're not going to get it is because they've been victimized by the brainwashing of our society. They've been victimized by the brainwashing of white privilege. Some of y'all Negroes, some of y'all backward Negroes are brainwashed by this. I had an argument with a black female lawyer about the MeToo movement. And I said, but you're a lawyer. Aren't you supposed to believe in the basics of justice, that you're innocent till proven guilty? You're an attorney. Aren't you aware of what they're doing to black men who are being sent to prison falsely? Don't you care about the black men as much as you care about protecting Becky and her rights? You're a lawyer. Don't you understand that, that not only are people innocent until proven guilty, but the burden of proof should be on the accuser, not on the accused? You're a lawyer. Don't you understand that it's not right for Black men who are falsely accused to have to spend their whole lives proving themselves to the point where you have to be a damn choir boy in order for them to even believe that you might not have raped that woman? You're a lawyer. Don't you realize that a person's allegation, one person's word against another person's word, is nothing more than he said, she said? I do not understand. I think that there are some of us in this society. I kid you not. I swear to God, I really believe this. Some people, some of us, and I include some of y'all who are listening right now. You're cursed really with being too smart. Too intelligent, too logical. Seriously, you literally are cursed by the fact that you're surrounded by a bunch of dumbass motherfuckers who don't understand right from wrong, who don't understand up versus down. They don't understand that 2 + 2 is supposed to equal 4. 2 + 2 does not equal 186.5, no matter how many political agendas you put behind it. And so I personally think that, that this is what you need to watch out for. If I'm giving advice to Black people, I tell you, use common sense. You got to warn your son about Becky. You got to warn your kids, your husband, your brother, the Black men that you care about. If you're a brother out here, think carefully about who you're sleeping with. But even then, you must not forget who the real predators are and who the real victims are. The real predators are the people who are pushing these nonsense agendas. If you're part of the Me Too movement, you should detach yourself right away and join something else. Just say, look, I'm for the women's equal rights movement, or I'm support the womanism movement in the Black community. Whatever it is you want to do, pick another movement. The Me Too movement has been tainted. It has been tainted. The Me Too movement has been tainted as badly as Bill Cosby's legacy would be tainted if he were seen on video raping women. Imagine if Bill Cosby not only had all these accusations against him, but there was stacks of videotapes showing him actually raping the women. Nobody could defend that. No matter how good the Cosby Show was, you couldn't defend that. No matter how much money he gave to HBCUs, you can't defend that. No matter how many smart things he said throughout his life, you wouldn't be able to defend if there was a ton of evidence showing that Bill Cosby committed those crimes. The problem in Cosby's case was that there wasn't any evidence, right? But imagine if there was that much evidence that Cosby was guilty, even those of y'all who are defending his right to justice would say, I don't know, I'm not supporting none of that. I know I would probably say, no, look, there's proof. He's R. Kelly now. Now he ain't Bill Cosby, he's R. Kelly. I ain't defending R. Kelly, right? Well, the Me Too movement is the R. Kelly of white people. The Me Too movement is the R. Kelly of white people because there is a tremendous amount of evidence that this agenda is being used for the continuous assault and predatory behavior against Black people. It's being used to basically allow anybody who wants to harm another person in a predatory fashion to do so without any form of retribution, without any risk that their behavior is going to be put under the spotlight. The Me Too movement has become as disgusting and as tainted as R. Kelly's legacy was tainted when he was seen on tape with that little girl peeing on her on video. So if you are part of the Me Too movement and you care about justice, you should walk away. If you're part of the Me Too movement and you care about Black people, you should walk away. If you're part of the Me Too movement and you have 2 brain cells in your head, you will walk away from the movement. Not because you don't believe that sexual assault is wrong. We all agree on that. You should walk away because they allowed the movement to be watered down by any old lying ass SOB who decided they wanted to use that power to destroy another person. Walk away. Just walk away. That's it. So that's my 2 cents. Hit the like button, the share button, and the subscribe button. Also, I'm gonna do my little Black history moment of the day because y'all probably went to the same damn schools I didn't learn no damn Black history and shit. So let me help y'all out right quick and give you somebody that some of y'all know about this person, but I'm gonna make sure everybody knows about this woman because she's a bad woman. Her name is Miss Annie Malone. Now I'm holding up this card here so you can see it. This is the animated version because this is coming from our flashcards we have for kids on Black history. And Annie Malone was born August 9th, 1869. She died in 1957. So what is that? That's what, 31 plus She's 88 years old when she died. She was the country's first African-American millionaire. Malone built a very successful business creating hair care products for Black women. In 1918, Malone established Poirot College in North St. Louis, a trade school to train beauticians and barbers, as well as secretaries and bookkeepers to work on the marketing side of the business. Poirot was the school was so successful that by the 1930s, Malone was one of the wealthiest African-American women in the world, probably one of the wealthiest people in the world. And so anyway, let me tell you one thing about Annie Malone that's fascinating is a lot of people give credit, a lot of unfair credit, to be honest with you, to Madam C.J. Walker. You know, they kind of feel like she's the originator when it came to this wealthy Black women, you know, thing, or being wealthy from hair, stuff like that. That's not true. Actually, Annie Malone is the one who trained Madam C.J. Walker, from what I understand. Annie Malone, actually, not only was she the foundation, you know, from which Madam C.J. Walker learned everything she knew, but also Annie did a lot more in terms of scope, based on my perception, when it came to really educating just thousands and thousands and thousands of her people. And that's one of the things I've told you guys, that it's not just a matter of how good you're doing and how successful you are. Your success doesn't mean a whole lot. You're minimizing your success when you don't translate that success into knowledge for other people. So you must teach as well as learn. You must spread the blessing by making sure that everybody around you is affected in a positive way by the fact that you even existed. So Annie Malone, I salute her. This sister gave, I think she gave $25,000 to Howard University in like 1922 or something, which is insane. I mean, who gives $25,000 back then was, I think it was like $1 million, not $1 million, but it was a lot of money back then. And she gave all this money to Howard. She built a great school that educated thousands and thousands of her own people. She built her own business. And I love Annie Malone because Annie Malone is the greatest personification of a Boyce Watkins kind of character that I can think of. And it sounds arrogant to even say it that way. Really, I'm more of an Annie Malone than she is a Boyce Watkins, because she's the originator. I'm just the imitator. But Annie Malone, I think, probably embodies the spirit of what I would have always wanted to represent more than anybody else. Maybe Marcus Garvey's right there. So if you look at the two Black people that I really admire, that I look to and kind of say, okay, I love what they did. We need more of that. I look at Marcus Garvey, I look at Annie Malone. So do your research, check out Annie Malone. If you want your kids to know about Annie and all the other Black history leaders and moguls, these flashcards are actually given us and sponsored by Melanated Moguls at Your Black World. So feel free to go to melanatedmoguls.com and you can get flashcards for your kids. That's melanatedmoguls.com. They cover a lot of different people like Thomas Day, Sheila Johnson, King Mansa Musa, Stanley O'Neill, Osceola McCarty, people that you don't learn about in school, but your children need to know about. Because remember, I told you part of the Black Core 3 is that we believe in educating our own children. So I'm going to hold it higher. It says melanatedmoguls.com. Somebody please type that in so other people can see the URL, melanatedmoguls.com. All right, so I'm about to go. I'm in China right now. When I get back, I'm going to put together a lecture on how I believe you should run your family like the Chinese government runs its country. And because there is a clear pattern in terms of the process that was used for China to develop long-term economic prosperity that they've achieved all throughout the world. I actually have put together a model where we can condense what the Chinese government did with its citizens and show you how you can actually do that with your own family and use the same value systems that the Chinese implemented to make sure that your family does well. So because at the end of the day, it's not a matter of the whole Black community moving forward. I can't move the whole Black community, neither can you, none of us can, but you can move your family forward, right? And really a community is nothing more than a collection of families. So I believe in family-specific economic models. That way you ain't got to wait for Jesse and Al. You ain't got to wait for Black leadership to come together. You ain't got to wait for the Democratic Party to come along. You ain't got to wait for those cooning Negroes down the street to figure it out. You can take you and yours, the people around you, the people that love you, the people that think like you, and say, okay, you know what? The whole ship is sinking, but we about to build a hell of a lifeboat, right? In fact, it's more than a lifeboat. You can actually, in a generation or two, actually have a yacht. And even as the world is sinking, you are prospering, right? In every country in the world, even the poorest countries in the world, there are always people who ain't caught in the struggle. Even in the poorest countries in the world, there's always somebody who's doing all right, right? Now, I'm not trying to say it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just trying to tell you that the whole country is not going to be all right in 50 years. I'm here to tell you that the Black community is not going to be all right in 50 years. But you and your family can be not just doing okay, not just surviving, not just, getting over the hump. You can actually be well ahead of the curve and actually be doing better than the average white American in this country. There are millions of Black people. People don't talk about this, but there are millions of Black people who have income levels that exceed the average white person. The question that should be asked is, what are they doing that's different from what the masses are doing? So that's it. So that's what this lecture is going to be all about. I'll hit you guys up, let you know when it's going to be offered. You can choose to participate, choose not. It's up to you. But it's going to be kind of a TV event. I'm going to make this into a thing when I get back from China, because I came here to do research. And Lord, oh my goodness, I have come up with so many revelations and confirmations on pre-existing models that it's ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you, China is they are probably the greatest practitioners of powernomics that I've ever seen in my life. Diallo is asking me to call him. I'm sorry, man, I can't call you. I got a million people I got to call back. But if you ever want to have a business meeting and you're serious, there is a fee to meet with me on one-on-one, because I don't have a lot of time. But you always email my manager at boycewatkins.com. Feel free to, email her if you'd like, manager at boycewatkins.com. All right, I'm out of here. Don't forget, if you'd like to join the League of Intelligent Black People, feel free to go to intelligentblackpeople.com. That's intelligentblackpeople.com. Make sure you hit the like button, share button, and subscribe button. And I'm out of here, guys. And I'm a go, because my Wi-Fi bill is going to be insane, because I'm actually connecting through my phone. But I love y'all so much. I just had to make sure I took some time to reach out. So take care, everybody. Be well, and I love you. See you soon. Peace.